they kind of do want to do butter.
I see. Oh, I see. Okay, I gotcha.
Okay. Okay, welcome everybody to our second day of FSOSS. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a professor here at Seneca, and I'd like to introduce to you Simon Lightstone. He's a programmer at FSOSS. And a little bit about him. He is an open source programmer and entrepreneur. He's the lead backend developer at PumpUp.co, a TechCrunch listed startup. Simon is the creator of IQ Uploader, which is free open source software that lets people share files using their own hardware. And he'll be presenting to us today the easiest file sharing powered by open source. Take it away.
Great, thanks for that intro. All right, so we're going to jump in. Also, I'm just curious so I know how deep I'm going to go technically, because as you know, when it comes to setting up your own server, doing your own file sharing, it can get a little hairy. So just raise your hands. How many people here have used, say, Git? Okay, I think we'll be okay to go into any type of detail that we want, but I'll keep it somewhat user-friendly for everybody. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. How to keep your data private, some really simple open source tools out there. Sharing privately, some problems with security that people encounter, and also another big thing is ease of use. Obviously, if you want to spend a lot of time setting up an open source solution, then you can do that, but I'm going to just jump right in and show you a really easy way to do it. So quick bio, who is this guy who's talking about open source? So a bit about me. I started a startup called IQ Storage. It did mission critical data storage for military contractors, finance companies, hospitals, and I had some pretty interesting software projects going on there to do large-scale syncing. That was acquired by J2 Global, which is a publicly traded company, and we had this really interesting open source thing that we're setting up, which was an open source Dropbox clone called IQ Uploader. And at first, of course, that was a great reason for them to want to talk to us and acquire us. And as soon as they got serious, they realized they don't want to pay any money to support an open source project, so they just let me have it, which was convenient because I really liked it. And then afterwards, I recently joined a startup called PumpUp, which is really cool. I'm their lead backend developer, and you guys should definitely check it out. And we're hiring, and we're very big into open source. We use all open source technologies. If you don't Node or anything like that, or Backbone, definitely have a talk with me or one of my colleagues, Anthony, here. And we're definitely interested in working with people who know open source. It'd be an awesome opportunity. So, great. So first I'm going to talk about some of the solutions out there to sync in terms of open source. The first one that I built is called IQ Uploader. And this was a very simple solution. It was designed to be Dropbox, sync your files in real time, and be very simple to use. And the backend technology was FTP. Now initially, a lot of people might say, hey, why are we using FTP? That's an old protocol. Actually, originally we used Subversion, which does great binary differentials, if you guys know. However, while it's great for people in this room, it just wasn't a solution that everybody could use. And for that reason, we switched it to FTP and said, hey, just as how HTTP can be secure or insecure, let's do FTP right, and let's use FTP SSL, so now you can sync like Dropbox to any hosting account, GoDaddy, or your own FileZilla server. Very, very simple. And it works with most major web hosts, GoDaddy in particular. We covered the top ones. It works with FileZilla server as a backend or any other FTP server. I'm going to show you just quickly a demo of it. Now, who here by operating system? So who here uses a PC? Hands up. Okay, great. And who here uses Mac? Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I use it on the OS that everybody else does. And Linux or Ubuntu? Okay, so a lot of people are using multiple OSs. I'm gonna show you the demo in Vista through Parallels Desktop. So first, quick to show you the full experience. And again, you can download it from iquploader.com. So here is, let's just see if you can see this. So this is what the app looks like when you start up. So again, it's open source stuff. You can download it from Google Code, though I think we need to push the latest update. But it's very simple. If you have any FTP server or FileZilla server, make sure you enable SSL. You just type in your server, username and password. You might wonder where all those other complicated FTP settings are. They're all under expert settings if you do want to get more granular, but most people don't even need that. Just click login, and bam, you can set some custom folder rules. By the way, there's a bug we found in folder rules. I'll update that. but it works very well. You just do that, and just like Dropbox, you can quickly access your sync folder, and you can quickly I'm trying to let's just rename this as a test. And you can quickly share files or move them around, and everything is done in real time. So no matter what you've got there, it's going to just move it right away. Even if you have hundreds of thousands of files, it will work. And then if you have files that you can see, but now all this stuff is going to be synced to your own secure FTP server. Now, the great thing about that is, unlike OwnCloud and some other solutions which require a big setup, this is just extremely, extremely easy to use. You just have regular FTP and you're done, and you just download it for Mac or Windows and you're good to go. So show of hands, who here has actually set up an FTP server before? Okay, that's a pretty decent show of hands. So definitely some people. Who here has installed a PHP script before, or a similar web script? We have a very smart audience. Even the cameraman has his hand up. So, okay, so that's a lot of people. In this room, obviously, we have a lot of brain power. However, very often, people came to me and said, well, how do I have my own server so I'm not sending my stuff to the internet cloud? You know, I keep it on my own hardware, but I'm not a programmer. How can I do that? So in other words, for us in this room, the file sharing, setting up your own server can be pretty easy. But for somebody who really wants privacy, and as you know, this is a growing concern, or wants to use their own hardware and know exactly where their files are located, even setting up their own FTP server was just too much of a step, I found. So how am I going to be able to deliver the ability to use privacy and use your own server without having to even set up a backend? So that's kind of my one meme for Darth Vader. So we took it a step further to create something called Share by Link, which is just extremely, extremely simple to set up. Unlike OwnCloud, where you had to set up MySQL databases, with Share by Link, if you want to use your own backend, it's just PHP with no complications, and it'll run on any host. We put a lot of work into making sure that regardless of how the host is configured, it will actually upload. And to show how easy that is, I'm going to bring us back to our demo screen. And so back to Vista. And I'm going to go to sharebylink.com. I'm going to download. So we're just going to give it a second to download. For those curious, it uses Python and Qt. And now, if we go to, say, our sample pictures folder, all we got to do is right-click, share files online, and bam, you have a link to download, which is already on your clipboard. So, and as you can see, it downloads. Now, we haven't set up our own server. By default, I wanted a product where somebody could get started and just not have to worry at all about configuring any system. So by default, it uses actually one of IQ Storage's servers, and that's basically the deal we have. We provide free software, and they'll provide free servers for anybody who wants to use it. But of course, the whole point is that you can configure it for your own server, and that's done really easily. There's instructions on our website which I'll go through, but all you do is replace the link to the PHP file here. And then, if you do want to set a username and password, because obviously you may not want other people using your sharing server, then you just enter the username and password under the configuration. So, and it's very, very easy to share. The links are pretty short, and they're very email friendly, right? So again, you just paste the link and it downloads. Now I'm going to show you, now that the downside to this is very, very simple, and it really replaces that one thing you always have with where you just want to be able to share a file with Dropbox, just right click, share it. But again, the files aren't encrypted. So I'm going to show you how to use AXCrypt. First I'm going to ask how many people have used AXCrypt, just so I don't go over the same thing that other people may have done. But I showed how to encrypt the files with AXCrypt and then share them with IQ Uploader, and that way you have a full, very simple way to share encrypted data, your own private data, without having to worry. So now I'm going to just cover a few more things before we talk about encryption and some concerns. Okay, actually, yeah, now we'll talk about encryption. But before I go on to encryption, I want to take a break and just ask who has any questions. Do you have any questions about how to configure things or things like that up to this point? Anybody have any questions?
Can you sync two different folders to two different servers?
Yes, you can. So to sync, you'd use the IQ Uploader, and to sync two different. Wait, do you mean like sync a folder A on your computer to folder B on another laptop?
I'm thinking I have an FTP server here that I let other people also look at. So stuff I'm syncing to share, and then stuff to another, maybe the same server, just a different section on it that others can't see. So I'm thinking that sort of segregation. So I got my public data folder and my private data folder, and syncing them. So there's two separate streams of syncing, but the same application handling it.
Yep, okay, so I'll show you how to do that. That's extremely common, and it's done using the folder rules. Let me go back to the window very briefly. So in that case, here you see folder rules here. And that, by the way, this is very common because you have, most people have their own web host. They have a GoDaddy account. God forbid, no. GoDaddy is actually really good. They've improved their support a lot. But you might have a HostGator account or whatever you have, and you'll have a public folder for your files, and you also have a private folder. You want to just sync the stuff in your private folder, create a new private folder. So here you click folder rules, then you choose sync only some folders, choose the folders, add a folder, and here it actually lists the folders. It'll list all the folders on your local and remote, so you just choose the one you want, click OK, save, and then you're good to go. And then it will only sync what's inside that folder. Does that answer your question?
You haven't showed me how it's two separate FTP servers.
Oh, so you're saying sync from one and then
So
sync
I've got
it
a
to
folder here,
Yeah.
I want there, and a folder here, I want there.
Oh, you mean like have multiple accounts?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Yes, we have that. Here, I'll show you. So this was designed to be like very, very simple. So if you click here, back to login screen, then just click FTP bookmarks, and there you go. You can create multiple bookmarks, and then you can connect to another site. Is that what you mean? Like you can
Sort of. Can this manage having the two streams? Like I fire it up and it does the two, and I'm not having to manually flip between the two.
Oh, okay. Yes, you can do that. You just have to run multiple instances. So I don't know any other servers off the top of my head, but in some, you can definitely do that. You could just, like we actually thought about that when doing it, because I usually run like 3 FTP sites at once in terms of sync. So in that case, you can just start another instance, and each one is in its own process. And then you can just log in. I mean, we can even demonstrate it with the same site.
Yeah, just different folders in the same site would cover it.
Oh yes, that's right. So here we can say log in and sync different folder rules. So here we would select, say, hello. Oh. And then when we sync, these would both sync differently. Like you'd actually sync different folders. I guess the downside is you'd have multiple icons, each checkmark icon would be. So The downside is that you have who enjoys having tons and tons of icons in the bottom of their bar, but the upside is you see the sync status for each one independently.
For Windows 7, it goes elsewhere.
Yes, you'd have to, in Windows 7, you'd have to configure it to show in the taskbar explicitly, I believe.
Which, if you don't care for it there, you can have it sort of hidden, which is nice in its own way.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Okay, great. Any other questions before I go on? Oh, there are, okay, yeah.
Is there requirement for Linux?
Yeah, okay, so IQ Uploader, we're having issues with Python. We're working on it in some, and we plan within 3 months we'll have a client for Linux. That was actually the intention from the get-go. Qt and Python, and we have an experimental version, but Qt and Python, Qt, Python, and Linux. We have builds actually out there, but they're hard to set up, so we didn't release them publicly. I will get your email and send it to you when it's done. However, IQ Share by Link is for Linux, and that's great because obviously if you use Linux, you very often want to share stuff easily. So if you go to sharebylink.com, you can download the Linux version, and IQ Uploader, be patient, we'll definitely have a build out there probably in 3 months once we sort out a few more installation issues. Any other questions?
More an observation, I can see that being great also for website maintenance. You don't have the share going all the time, you do your edits to a website, you click and let it sync.
Yeah, you're right, and in fact we have that's one very big use case. I mean, the way I saw it was, so you can see you can even pause processing files, so maybe you're working on a file that you don't want uploaded right away, then you just pause the processing, and then when you want to go back to syncing everything, you unpause. So the idea behind this was that in order to encourage privacy, right now there's maybe 5 companies out there: Microsoft, Dropbox, Amazon, you'd consider one, and Mac, Apple with their iCloud. And basically those companies are going to control all your data. And so if you want to share data or if you want to do anything with the internet, you're stuck with those companies. But what I felt with IQ Uploader is we should be building software that uses standard web hosting frameworks, because there's a million hosting companies out there. So to truly give consumers variety in terms of where their data is kept, the best scenario is to work with the technologies that web hosts provide, so that way people have much greater choice in terms of where their data is stored and who is actually controlling it. And of course, because usually hosts are based on open standards, you can also set up your own server. So that's kind of the idea. So yeah, we're going to actually, try to continue making it to make it really easy for people to share like that. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to take one last question and then we're going to go on.
Just for the Linux, are you going to target specific distribution, or is it actually going to work on all of them instead of trying to run it on SUSE and it's meant for Ubuntu and I start yelling at my computer?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I could talk a lot about how long it took me to get things working on, because at first I was like, oh, I've got to have it on Ubuntu, Red Hat, everything, and Fedora, but it actually is quite difficult to get a build out for everything. We're targeting Ubuntu right now, and right now Share by Link works for Ubuntu out of the box. It uses GDebi, so Debian, I believe, should be supported pretty well or pretty soon. So basically, right now we're focusing on Ubuntu, but you might have luck with just installing it. If you follow the instructions on the website, actually it may just work out of the box. So. Okay, so I'm going to actually go on and then we'll save any other questions for later, for after the presentation, because I'm just going to go real quickly. So now we're going to talk about encryption. So there's a lot of things, especially as some of you had a data storage provider, you'd be surprised. Things are quite, and also knowing some people who work at big companies, things are, now we have to have very high security at IQ Storage, but after speaking to people in the web hosting industry and speaking to people at other big companies, things are more lax than I felt they should be in terms of how data is really cared for. And that's one thing that kind of inspired me. I really saw the problem head on. And so I do think it's an issue in terms of who has your data, and that's one thing that inspired me to really write this software. You also have to be careful whenever you're encrypting anything. Honestly, from as far as I can tell, almost every type of encryption can be broken over time. There are exceptions, but the work you'd have to do would go far beyond what you would want to do to like protect a semi-secret document. And for that reason, I guess just some tips, like usually have a long password, but even if you have a really long password, if you're using a poor encryption algorithm and you're not doing things such as properly salting, then you're almost like still dead in the water. I mean, these days, I'm sure many of you have seen, you can crack a hash online just using rainbow tables that are put up on the internet. And especially with distributed computing, it's very hard to say that data would be definitively safe unless you have a really, really long password, which you would have to write down to remember. So just a few notes on that. And so one thing you should keep in mind whenever you encrypt data before I go into Xcrypt is always think how important is the data. Because if the data is something that you just want to keep from, I don't know, you just want it private because it's, say, your credit card information. I think that's a classic example. Who wants their credit card information stored in plain text in some online vendor's database? Well, if you're storing your credit card information, then honestly, the encryption doesn't have to be, you don't have to need like such a long password, because the time it will take to decrypt that in a worst case scenario would be enough time for you to just get a new credit card or for your credit card to expire. And also the credit card data itself is short in length, so it's not too big a deal. But if you have something which you feel is very secret, then over years, it is very possible, as you know, with with how governments work in terms of decrypting data, it is very possible that over years they will be able to decrypt that data. I mean, even triple DES, and they won't attack it directly. I mean, they can just, if they can get hold, they'll probably have the salt, and they'll just, keep guessing at your password until they get something that works. So I'm going to quickly go and show you guys. Who here has used AXCrypt before, by the way? Show of hands. Not many people. I'm quite surprised. Okay, so good. AXCrypt is by far the easiest way to have good encryption. And I have to say that just because a program tends to have encryption does not mean that they're actually taking the right precautions. Like, they may not actually be salting the passwords. They may be using weak keys. There's a lot of vulnerabilities. Oh, sorry. So Xcrypt is like mega easy to use. Again, all the tools I'm showing you are ones that anybody could really use to protect their own data. Oh, here you definitely want to choose I do not accept. When I installed Xcrypt, they actually did not have that. But
It's that mechanism by which a lot of instances of Chrome have been installed.
really?
Yeah, Google definitely did that as a method with a lot of different good software, but came from made it your default.
Interesting. It's actually a very good way to monetize, apparently. I have a friend, I'm not that I'm saying that should be done, but they bundle it. A lot of free software, a lot of open source software will now bundle with things like that, and the idea is that the authors get paid when somebody installs it. Of course, one could debate there's a balance between privacy and nagware like that, right, and providing a good product. So anyways, so we're going to just encrypt. It's really simple. In fact, we can even encrypt right to an exe, but we're just going to encrypt. Now, just have a password test. You can have an entire key file, and bam. Now, one thing to remember, by the way, when you encrypt a file, see, this does the work, as far as I know, of also cleaning up the file data on the disk after it's encrypted. I didn't read into the details in terms of how far it goes, but I will tell you that most of the time, in terms of really securing data, there's no sense in even going after the encrypted data. Usually they'll say, oh, this person had a file and then encrypted it. They can go after the raw hard drive on which you made the encryption and restore the file that was then encrypted, right? because getting past encryption is hard, but as you know, when a file is deleted, it's not actually deleted. In fact, even if it's overwritten once, then it can still be restored. They can even use magnetic, like some techniques to actually restore data that's been overwritten 1 or 2 times, theoretically. Practically, have I ever seen that done, ever? No. But it's definitely, if you have very secure data, then it is possible. Anyway, so this is a great encrypted file, and now that it's all encrypted with our secret password, we just share it online, and bam. Now you have, by the way, these links are pretty secure, like you can't just traverse to that link, so then you can share the link, and you've got your encrypted file shared, just a few clicks, right? And that's basically how it goes. So now I'm going to go back to the presentation. Let's just see how I am for time here. I actually have an entire half hour left. So we'll see where things go. All right. So before I go into the more comprehensive section, that's media stuff like OwnCloud, which gives you a lot more functionality. I just want to see, yeah. So I think before I go there, I'm going to take questions. Does anybody have any questions so far about encryption in general, keeping your data private, other options available before we go on to more stuff? Okay.
So that Xcrypt is more of a single file encryption.
You can also encrypt, I believe you can also encrypt an entire folder. Yeah. The thing about Xcrypt is that it definitely has very legitimate encryption. Like I've seen some encryption packages out there which, all I know is that Xcrypt definitely does proper salting and does proper care in terms of creating a hash. I've seen other solutions out there which don't really do that. So now, what I'm going to do is show you a few other software solutions that you can use, which are a bit more advanced. One is called OwnCloud. OwnCloud is a really great company. They provide a more comprehensive solution that you can install on your web host. It's pretty easy to set up, but it's not for the faint of heart. If you've never set up a MySQL database, you're probably going to have trouble. Has anybody here set up a script with a MySQL database backend? Put up your hands if you've done that. Okay, so already it's less, right? So uploading a PHP file with IQ Uploader, that I feel anybody could do, and that way they have basic sharing. To set up your own like Dropbox full replacement with user management, that's a little more complicated. So I'm just going to discuss the options out there first. OwnCloud, I would say, is going to be your best bet. They're pretty good. Once they are all set up, they're pretty easy to use. And also, they're actually a well-funded company. So I believe that if you do choose OwnCloud, then the advantage is that you're going to have updates and things like that to really get a great experience. Another one that's been gaining momentum, and has actually been many people's personal favorites, is a C-File. Now the thing about C-File is that they have slightly better syncing. So OwnCloud is known to not sync very well. C-File has much better syncing, but definitely feature-wise, you might find yourself missing some of the plugins from OwnCloud. So it's really your choice. I just recommend you try them both if you're really serious about getting the full replacement. So given the time, who wants to see? I'm going to go through just the basics of. It actually takes quite a while to install these, and I wonder how many people here are interested in actually seeing the install OwnCloud on a server before I go through those steps. I see no hands. I don't blame you because it's quite a lengthy process. In that case, I will leave it to you guys to discover, and I'll actually leave you my email address in case you want any help with that. But I would recommend taking a look at OwnCloud if you want a more full solution.
Can you tell us maybe what the differences are, because you're saying this one has more features?
Okay, yeah. So C-File. Okay, so OwnCloud. If you're an open source programmer, you'll probably really like OwnCloud. Assuming you want to go through the hassle of setting things up. OwnCloud has a plugin interface, so for example, it's not just about your files. In OwnCloud, you have a calendar, you have all this is shared, you have a lot of plugins to do things with your files and index them. You have different online viewers. You even have a Google Docs-like interface where people can collaborate on a document together. So really, with OwnCloud, you get the full package, and they're really trying to head towards that. C-File is really just for files. There's not many plugins. You can't write your own. I guess last time I checked with C-File, because it's been a while, you can add your own plugins. Let's show some screenshots of OwnCloud and then C-File. And so I would say, if you really care about syncing and you don't care about anything else, you want a reliable sync platform, I would say go with C-File. If you want to do some more interesting, cool things with your data, like sharing a calendar, like among all your users, then I would go for OwnCloud. And if you really just want to share one file, then I would highly recommend Share by Link, because that's just way, way, way easier and is only one PHP file. Yeah.
How well do these two behave behind a NAT router?
That's a good question. Actually, they spent a lot of time making sure that that's not a problem. And so I don't think you'll have too many issues. What people do, including Share by Link, now IQ Uploader uses FTP, that can have a few things, but we do a lot of work in the software to get around it. But so for IQ Uploader, just to step back a minute, that will require a connection through FTP. That could be blocked in your router. However, it does use passive mode, and it intelligently tries to set up your router if your router supports that. The other three options, in sum, they behave very well with routers because they tunnel everything through HTTP or HTTPS, so you don't have to worry about any sort of configuration.
Are you familiar with iFold?
Yes. Okay, so
Yeah, how's it relate?
has anybody here actually used iFolder? You've used it.
I'm
So
an ML integrator for many years, so.
good thing I asked. I hope I'm not offending you. At IQ Storage, we saw iFolder like, oh great, open source project, looks like there's a big company behind it. We frankly had a lot of trouble getting iFolder to be stable. There were many sync issues. I don't know if it's real, I heard on the internet some people saying it's real time. As far as I could tell, at IQ Storage we had hundreds of terabytes, and our data sets were millions of files in size. Even small size sets, iFolder could not quite take.
Their proprietary version worked pretty solidly.
Okay.
And that's why I was wondering where it went with the open source part of it, whether that worked well.
I wonder, maybe there was feature creep, but I would say that, we gave it a very good swing. We put a lot of resources into trying to get iFolder working. Again, because Novell is a great company to support that, it just wasn't anything compared to any of these solutions. There's actually a lot of solutions I can talk about which don't work, but I'm not here to talk about which ones don't work. I'm here to talk about the awesome ones, so you don't have to figure it out yourself. And I'd say these are the top three. You can definitely find other ones which may not be, functioning. Any other questions? Yep, at the back.
Have you had any issues when syncing large amounts of files or directories over 10,000?
Okay, so I'll go by one at a time. I'd say your best option for syncing tons and tons of files at this time is C-File, because they have the most reliable sync. OwnCloud, when we tried it, it broke at a certain level. It didn't break, but we'd find a file which would appear out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately with sync, those things are quite disastrous. With IQ Uploader, we put a lot of work into the sync engine. However, we do not yet have binary differentials. Now, truth be told, binary differentials, that binary differential means that if you have like a big Word document, right, and then you edit a little bit, you just like change one line in the Word document, a binary differential will only upload the little 1 kilobyte difference that you changed, not the whole file. So it's very helpful that C-File and OwnCloud both support binary differentials, you'd think. However, it doesn't work like that. In fact, you'll save almost nothing because all files these days are internally compressed, and therefore you won't get quite as much mileage for your differentials, because if you do a differential in a compressed file, it doesn't even work. Like it uses a rolling checksum algorithm, and that just will not save a single byte if it's zipped data, because every change will change the zip significantly, right? So if you save a difference, it's not like there's a little difference here. The whole file will change because it's being compressed differently. So I would recommend even IQ Uploader. We've definitely tested it on loads of 100,000 files and had no problems. Once you go past 100,000 files, best of luck to you. It probably will work, but in terms of the official test cases that we run, we only do it up to 100,000 files. So, so those are your three options. I'd recommend C file if you have really big loads, for sure. Anybody else have questions? Yeah.
Any opinion on BitTorrent Sync?
Yeah, no, BitTorrent Sync is also a very good option. Actually, they're another one which is stable. However, one reason I'm not covering them is they aren't actually open source at this time yet. I'm actually quite connected to some of the people here, like I've spoken to the founders of OwnCloud and some others, and everybody's very friendly. I spoke to BitTorrent, and they actually do have plans to make it open source. But whether they're serious about that or not is another question. So yeah. BitTorrent Sync does work very, very well though, and it's definitely a good alternative. BitTorrent Sync, however, you need BitTorrent Sync set up on 2 different PCs for it to work. Any other questions? Okay, so I think that basically covers it. Who here now feels that they could that they could set up their own private server and encrypt a file and send it completely privately using, say, a random posting account? Okay. At least some hands are up. Some hands should be going up there. So again, to recap, easiest way to start sharing files very securely: install AXCrypt. You just right-click, encrypt the file, and send it. Install a share by link. Just install it, right-click the file, and then you can create a sharing link. And then if you want to take things, and then you can share that encrypted file by just right-clicking it. And if you wanted to get even more secure and have those files on your own server, just upload the PHP file and change it in the share by link settings. And really, it's as easy as that. So again, it's just a right-click away. So there's really no excuse to have to share files that you want to keep secure in plain text anymore. And before I wrap up, I originally was actually asked to talk about some business models and things like that in terms of open source. I can do that as well, but I figure I can go over if there's interest. Does anybody have interest in going over that, or what are the thoughts? Raise your hands if you do. Oh, okay, well, maybe some people might, but.
The business model that you mentioned?
Yeah.
I'm interested.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to go over that like super quick, one slide. But before we do that, does anybody have any more questions about IQ Uploader or Share by Link? None? Okay, great. So guys, if you can spread the word about Share by Link, I really believe that if people know more about it, then we'll be able to have a scenario where we're taking a lot of data off the big corporations and letting us have it under our own control. For the record, I actually like big corporations. However, it's always better to know that you have the option of controlling your own data, right? So it's not about anybody being bad. It's about you want to be able to know where your stuff is and have that option for yourself. Now I'm going to quickly go through a few things, just in terms of making money if you want to be an open source. One way is to be an employee, and in case people haven't told you, open source employees actually, like if you work for Mozilla, they get paid just as well as anybody else, if not more, because the type of tools you need to be familiar with for open source is actually a lot more complicated. Another option that I've seen is people who are open source and then they go on to become a consultant. I will tell you the hourly rates for an open source consultant are actually very high. And if you work on an open source project and you do feel that the work you're doing on that project is important and somebody contacts you, as a company who's been in this scenario time and time again, I would recommend that you ask for an hourly rate. And that's actually a great way to make money off an open source project. In terms of startups, your options are either going with no funding. A great example of that is OrientDB, which is a technology we work with at PumpUp. They bootstrapped. It's very hard, but you can still make money off that versus funding. And then an example of a company that got funding with open source is OwnCloud. They actually, even though they're open source, they had no trouble raising millions of dollars. And another option which I'd advocate, which is one that I chose after I exited from my company, IQ Storage, I joined PumpUp, which is to join an early stage open source startup. PumpUp isn't open source, but we use so much stuff and we contribute a lot to the open source community, so I felt that that was great. So choosing an early stage startup I think is the best, because then you get the solid payroll, but you also have a lot of upside if the company does well. In terms of models to monetize your software, honestly, support is, many people try to say, well, we'll sell support. I actually think that that's a very poor way to monetize an open source project. The reason is that you really want to focus on programming, and when you are selling support for even, say, $200 a month, well, that's not going to get you very far, and then you're on call 24 hours a day, right? So I would actually recommend finding another model. One is I guess there's a few things people have done. OrientDB, for example, and I really like OrientDB, so we're going to talk about them. They decided to give the open source, the basics as open source, and then they have an enterprise edition, which really you'd only use if you are an enterprise, but they charge a whole pile of money for that. And I will attest that we do, unfortunately, pay that pile of money at PumpUp, because we need that quality and we need a better solution. So I would say having tools and licensing, which for those who really do need to pay, would be a very good way to monetize. And I would think twice before offering a model where you're selling your time for a flat fee, because being on call 24 hours a day is very, very difficult. So I hope that helped answer some of your questions. And I should say that the person who owns OrientDB, that's a great example of somebody who did start small. It was a university project. He probably got paid to do a master's, and while he did that, he wrote OrientDB, and now he does seem to be doing pretty well with it. So yeah, I would recommend also checking out OrientDB. I think it's a great piece of software. It's a graph database that lets you also make standard SQL queries. Any other questions? Okay, so thanks so much for your time. If you have questions, you can come to me afterwards.
One quick thing. I'd like to thank you for your great presentation. Definitely some file sharing solutions for all of us. So a gift to you from the FSOSS Organizing Committee.
Great, thank you so much. So the last thing I'll say, guys, is if anybody is interested in working for a great startup that really loves open source, we're definitely looking for some bright programmers. And I even have a few awesome t-shirts for those who are very interested in applying. So come to me afterwards if you're interested and let me know.
It's okay, man. Keep it on. He got 2 minutes off after that. So.
Yeah, I know. Think about it. Is there a way to get a copy of the video?
It's gonna go on YouTube.
Oh, really?
I have no control.
Great, thank you.
Probably get your copy going if you contact.
Oh yeah.
Sounds great.
Some of the big ones.
Absolutely. I can help you and also get your reference letter. Yeah, I can have any, but let me give you my info.
Always doing the same thing.